Welcome to episode 26 of The Whole Story, and it is a special one today. Normally, when we do a whole story episode, we're launching a brand new feature, but today we are looking at something where we've been a bit remiss, guys, and we've never really bigged this area up enough, I don't think. And we've got a guest star with us. Paul, say hello. Who are you?
Hi, great to be here. Yeah, I'm Paul. I'm a developer on the Street Manager project. Yeah, first time on the whole story, so great to be here. Thanks, Paul.
Long time caller, first time listener. No, scrap that. So you're going to teach me about download all my data. I think I was busy doing other stuff when this area launched, and it's never been something that I know backwards and forwards. The SMEs did loads of work on this actually. So tell me about it, Paul. What is download all my data? What can it do? How do I use it? Talk me through it.
Yeah, so as you'll be aware, Paul, we have a few different options for reporting within Street Manager, and this is another one of those options. So I'm sure many people will be familiar with our list pages, which give key information for things like permit applications, change requests, FPNs, and inspections. You can see some of those just links to those list pages off the dashboard here. These also give lots of ways to filter data, and this data can be exported as CSV. But the data provided with these list pages and CSV exports are more like a snapshot in time. They show you what's the current state of affairs with permits within a particular time period with a particular status. So that's probably the main way that users would report on data within Street Manager. We also have the reporting API itself, which can be used to retrieve this same data that is returned on the list pages, but can be used, it can be incorporated directly into your own apps for custom reporting. It gives you a bit more detail than the list pages and current CSV exports, but you can also use that how you like. So download all my data then is another option on top of these ones. If the above options aren't enough, Street Manager also offers the ability to export all of your organization's data in a lot more detail across a number of CSV files. So this allows you to get a much fuller picture of your data in Street Manager, and this can be used to support more complex and flexible reporting than the other options. It also allows you to take this data, build up almost your own database of all of your Street Manager data itself across a particular time period. Maybe even build your own apps on top of that, bring this into your own reporting tools. But it also allows you to correlate and report on events across the life cycle of a permit, an inspection, an FPN, because we give you the works history as part of this data. And we
Wow.
also give you a lot of reference data to just cross-reference that history.
And people say Street Manager doesn't have any reporting. So can you show me how we would download all my data?
Yes, of course, Paul. So the other thing to say is that this is for admin users of
Yep.
promoter and highway authority organizations. So as you can see here, I'm signed in as an admin for the smoke test promoter organization. From the dashboard, if you scroll down to the admin section, we have this tile in the bottom left, download all my data. So going into there, we provide a date range that you can use up to a period of 31 days to download all your organization data. So if I wanted to have a look at my data for the month of April, I can just specify the start and end of April, click on export. That'll then take me to this familiar CSV export screen where we can see that this download is now being queued and will be processed accordingly.
So Paul, I know that we had some issues in the past with this is quite a large chunk of data for a big organization, and it was taking a
Yeah.
while. But I hear we've improved those wait times.
Yeah, we had some issues because, as you say, it's a large amount of data. We give you pretty much all of your organization data across many different database tables. And if you're running this for the whole month, or if you're running it, during the day at a peak time, some of that data could change by the time you've clicked export and by the time it was actually generated. So we had a few workarounds, such as just generating data for like a week or doing it out of hours, which worked in some cases, but we did still have some performance issues, and we spent a lot of time and a lot of focus trying to improve this. I'm pleased to say we have been able to. So it's working a lot more reliably and a lot more performant now than it was before.
Yeah, we can't say, oh, it will be 7 minutes or whatever, but we've got some
Yeah,
very positive feedback from users that it's much quicker than it used to be. So,
yeah.
um, have you got one that you prepared earlier in the best Blue Peter fashion?
I do indeed, Paul. So rather than waiting for the one I've just generated to complete, I'll show you an example from earlier.
Lovely.
So here we just have my local file system. So once the export is ready to download, you'll then get a zip file in your download folder. Once you decompress that and open the folder, you'll see there are quite a few different CSV exports within that.
So this is a
Um,
bit scary for me, Paul,
yeah,
like when I first look at it, but then I go, oh, right, okay, reason for refusal. So can you open that reason for refusal one? And what
sure.
what I think I've worked out is that so this is just the list of the codes that we use. So it isn't the data behind it, but what we're doing here is providing customers so they're going to see the number 17, and we tell them that that means other.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of reference tables like this within that folder we were looking at before. And as you say, that gives users the ability to, whenever they see one of these IDs, which is just the raw numbers that we store in the database, we're also providing the ability to look up what their actual meaningful names and values are.
So the first time you look at that list of what you get in that zip file, it's a
Yeah.
bit overwhelming, but quite a few of them are these sort of the background numbers, and in month two and month three you'll get used to that stuff, I suppose. So what would you like to show us from the this wide selection then?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the one of the main benefits from this type of export is that we give the works history, and which can basically be used to tell the story of what's happened to permits, inspections, FPNs over a period of time. So if you are looking at this list of files, the main one you want to start with is the audit.csv. Um, I'll just show you an example of that being um, used now. So this basically has, if for users that are familiar with works history, this will look quite familiar, but in a lot more detail. So you can see here various different IDs with different object types. So if an item of work history relates to a work generally, or a permit application, or a Section 81, you'll be able to tell that from the object type. Um, if we're to take permit assessment, for example, going down to um, line 16 here, we can see some more details, what actually happened in this case. So an application was submitted and then it was granted. We know this was the same application because it has the same object ID. Um, so you might be thinking, okay, which permit is this actually talking about? 208 doesn't give me much detail about that permit. That's where we can use some of the other files then in the download. So on the right hand side, I've opened the permit CSV. If we then look at the ID column and find that matching ID 208, we can see all of the other information about that permit. So the work reference number, the the date created, modified, and its status. So then we can apply the same process to the list of statuses, for example, and look in the permit status CSV file to see, okay, what status is status number 6. So yeah, and you can gradually build a picture of what's been happening by looking at the different work history items. The other
Okay.
thing to say, sorry, Paul, is that looking at the data this way probably isn't the most efficient or most intuitive. So what we would recommend is actually importing all this data into another reporting tool that users might have, and then they'll have a lot more flexibility for querying this type of data, but using the same underlying principle of looking at the audit or work history file and then correlating different data with the other files.
Have you got any examples of what these things that they might use would be?
So you might, for example, because we also give information of the users that are conducting each of these actions. So for permit assessment, for example, we can see more detail around which HA officer has been assessing the permit, and
Mm.
you can start to build a bit of a picture around, you know, which users are assessing permits or accepting permits for or on the first time, which users are more likely to reject permits. The same with the likes of inspections and FPNs. And this level of detail is something that you don't get with the other CSV exports.
So the difference here is that with an export, as you said earlier, if the current status is refused of the permit, that's what I'm going
Yeah,
to see on the applications and works export, right?
exactly. Yeah, you'll just get the current snapshot, the current state of play of whatever list of permits that you've filtered from the list screen and then exported.
But here, if it gets refused on the 11th of April and then granted on the 17th, I get both of those in this list.
Exactly, yeah. And you can start to build a bit of a picture around, okay, how many permits themselves are being granted on the first time round, or are most of my permits, the permits in my organization being refused first time round? And maybe you can start to identify some common behaviors and trends across your organization.
Yeah, and if you want to do a how many permits has each officer refused kind of thing, you could do that here. If you want to see how many applications you granted or you had refused as a promoter in that month, you can do all that here, and you don't necessarily need to know the works reference numbers to do that. It's more of a numbers game. But if you do need the works reference, I see you go into a different page and grab that. And when you talked about people uploading it into uh, tools that they might have you got any
Yeah.
examples of those?
I think the likes of Power BI could be used. I know we've one or two users who are using that, although I'm not sure how much they've used download all my data with that tool. But I think that's one that definitely could be used.
Yeah, I'd like to do something where we can get some sort of street manager users together and sort of knowledge share about the stuff they do with this, because I know that some organizations are making good use of this and some are using the reporting API, and yeah, there's all sorts of different things going on out there. So is there anything else you want to tell us about download all my data, Paul, or is that a good starter for 10 for people?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. I would say just, if you're not familiar with it already, check it out. Don't be overwhelmed by the number of files that um, you're given at the start, and just start with this audit CSV, so that you can track the works history and the changes of your permits, inspections, FPNs over time.
Well, thank you, Paul, for coming on the show. What an absolute treat. Um, Genuinely, this isn't me doing an act. Like I now know more about download all my data than I did 15 minutes ago. So thank you very much. That's the whole story, episode 26. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.